Call the member for Bruce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We've just treated to another one of the series of bizarre contributions from those opposite. Just because you use a reasonable voice can't cover up abject nonsense which is being spouted by those opposite. Talking down Australian manufacturing, it's terrible, it's stuffed, there's no workers, energy prices are out of control. We even heard that manufacturing in Australia is now on an extinction pathway from the previous speaker. It's like they forget they were the government for the last 9 years. It hasn't all changed overnight. The people opposite were the government of the country through the last decade of dysfunction and dithering and delay and decay. They're responsible for the situation we're in. I just remind them, the speakers to come after, maybe try taking some responsibility and have a look at your own record as you talk about the situation the country's in. I mean, we had 8 industry ministers, Deputy Speaker. 8. Well, actually we had 9. We only had 8 that the Australian people knew about. The 9th, of course, was Scott Morrison, the secret industry minister, when he was also Prime Minister. So that's 9 industry ministers in 9 years. Apparently that's Labor's fault that they made such a mess. There's a joke in my community, Deputy Speaker. How do you know there's an election on? Well, the Liberals turn up at a mosque. It's a little bit like what we're hearing here. How do you know the election's over? Well, the Liberals start to care and talk about Australian manufacturing. It is pathetic. If COVID taught our country anything, it's disruption to supply chains. If Russia's illegal war in Ukraine taught us anything, the need to manufacture the consumables of war and conflict. If history and common sense teach our nation anything, then it is the critical importance of urgently boosting our sovereign manufacturing capability. Yes, the government says, as we're mocked, we need to make more things here. We can make more things here. We should make more things here. We must make more things here. As the Prime Minister says, before the election and since, a future made in Australia. That's what our suite of policies together are about. And the National Reconstruction Fund, the $15 billion fund, which is the subject of this bill, is a critical part of that. We have a mandate. We announced it. We released it before the election. It was carefully designed with industry to respond to actual issues out there in the economy, and yet those opposites say they're going to vote against it. I encourage them to reconsider their position, and also to the Greens political party, don't join with the Liberals, actually back Australian manufacturing. It's now urgent. It's got 2 big goals: to transform industry, bring in new technology in critical sectors, and to create more secure, well-paid jobs, which is so important in my community in south-east Melbourne, covering part of the great Dandenong south-east metropolitan manufacturing precinct, stretching through Dandenong, through Hallam in my electorate, the largest single employment sector in that region. Really, really frustrates me when we hear the common media narrative talking down Australian manufacturing. That said, there's a few home truths. We'll never make everything here. We're a country of 25 million people in a globally connected, interdependent world with complex supply chains. We can't make everything here. Of course we've got to work with the rest of the world. But we need to do much better. You look at the stats. We're now around the lowest for manufacturing self-sufficiency of any developed country in the world. That's the record we've inherited from the former government, that they don't want to own, they don't want to talk about, they want to try and use a reasonable voice. So people forget that they were the government responsible for this, Deputy Speaker. That's what we hear. It's all doom and gloom. We heard the former Speaker say, my businesses yell at me. They yell at me. We're on a path to extinction. Well, I tell you what you could do if energy prices are such a big deal. You could have voted for the government's energy price relief plan. We recalled Parliament in December to cap gas prices, giving immediate relief to manufacturers. And what did they do? They voted against it. And what did they do before the election? They changed the law to cover up. I would say lie, but we're in the Parliament, so I can't say lie. They changed the law to cover up the power price rises that were coming down the pipeline, which consumers and businesses are now suffering from. But instead of working with the government to clean up the mess, they voted against it. They voted against power price relief, just as they're saying they're going to vote against support for manufacturing. We're also too low in economic complexity, which is a nerdy measure, the economists measure, to look at how complex our economy is. Can we make a wide diversity of goods, particularly high-value complex goods? Japan's at the top of that list. A few years ago, I think we'd slipped to 87th out of the 133 countries measured and had gone down over the decade that this mob were in office compared to the previous decade. It's now urgent that this bill passes, Deputy Speaker. A decade of neglect and drift. They chased the car industry out of Australia. They did it right here in the parliament from the government benches. Joe Hockey, Tony Abbott daring him to leave. And guess what? They left. They played politics with grants. The former Prime Minister made himself the chief decider in the modern manufacturing grants. He was going to make all the decisions. I mean, at least that was honest. It wasn't a series of coloured spreadsheets and dodgy stuff the Auditor-General found in all the other grants programs. At least he owned it. Well done. Got an inquiry into that. Some public hearings Friday. We'll see what went on. 8 industry ministers, as I said. We'll just name the rogues gallery. Macfarlan, Pine, Hunt, Sinodinos, Cash, Andrews, she's still here. Porter, Taylor, he's still there. And Morrison, well, he's sort of sometimes here. But despite their wasted decade, the $1 trillion in Liberal debt, all the mess, they've learnt nothing. They're still in here, in their reasonable voice, talking down Australian manufacturing, Deputy Speaker, instead of working with the government in the national interest. Voting for the bill to urgently revitalise manufacturing, they say no, no, no. I think we're not allowed to call them the noalition in here at the moment. It's one of those grey zone areas, but we'll stay away from that. We do it outside, though.
I think that's right.
Yeah, OK, right, no, got that. But I'm going to quote myself. Mayor Quimby off The Simpsons used to quote himself, so I'll be that guy for a moment. In my first speech to this parliament, I talked about the future of Australian manufacturing and said, if we're going to succeed, the story of manufacturing in Australia has to be like, will be like, the story of agriculture over 100 years. We'll see greater investment in technology, more mechanisation. We want to climb the value chain, value add to our natural resources, the raw products. It's going to mean higher skilled jobs, higher wage jobs, but fewer jobs overall, more productivity. That's the future we want to chase. High wage, secure, good, well-paid, skilled jobs. Not a low, no, we can't compete with the low-wage countries. That's not where we want to go. We want to climb that value chain across the globe. That's future success. And that's exactly what this bill is about. It'll provide finance, including loans, guarantees and equity, to drive investments in 7 priority areas in Australian manufacturing. Loans, guarantee and equity, not grants. Loans, guarantee and equity, modelled, I might say, on the very successful Clean Energy Finance Corporation, an initiative of the former Rudd-Gillard Labor government that, it was Tony Abbott's mob, actually, wasn't it? They tried to get rid of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Thank goodness they couldn't get that one through the Senate, because it's still there today, that has made record investments into clean energy, stimulated new investments, new technology, that's gone some way, one of the few things that was working under that mob, to lower our emissions and invest in new technology. 7 priority areas: value adding to resources, value adding in the agriculture, forestry and fisheries sector, unlocking potential and value add to raw materials like food processing, textiles, clothing, food manufacturing, transport, developing capabilities in transport manufacturing and supply chains, cars, trains, shipbuilding, all important in so many of our states and territories, medical science, leveraging our world-leading research. You know about this, Deputy Speaker, from your former life, sort of a current life still, a renowned medical specialist, teacher, researcher, providing essential supplies like medical devices, PPE, medicines, vaccines. So we can say PPE post the pandemic and people know what it is. Because we learnt as a country we need to make that stuff here and not rely on other countries when a crisis happens. We're too vulnerable to supply shocks. We're too vulnerable, frankly, to military blockades should the worst happen, because we don't make enough basic stuff here. It's urgent. Renewables and low-emission technologies. We got an almost admission from the former Speaker in his reasonable voice. He almost admitted that renewable energy might be, that's a big step forward from the nuclear brigade over there, that renewable energy might well be the cheapest form of new power. We'll take that as a step forward, a baby step. Might get 2 steps backwards today as they go on their nuclear tour of world disaster sites. Good old Uncle Ted over there in his homemade videos. Defence capability, so important. Lesson from Ukraine. You've got to make the consumables of war. You've got to be able, at the very least, to maintain and repair and sustain the platforms, the capabilities that you do have. You can't make all the big new shiny stuff here. And all the enabling capabilities, engineering, data science, software development, artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum. So get with the program. Have a serious look, I say to the opposition, have a serious look at the challenges we face and back this. It's not going to be, I mean, maybe they object to the fact it's not a slush fund. Whenever they hear fund, their little eyes light up from their time in government. Oh, how can we rort this? How can we distribute this to all the Liberal marginal seats? We did a good job with the congestion fund, didn't we? Apparently congestion only happens in Liberal electorates. That's why we put, is it? That's why you put 83% of the congestion fund into Liberal-held electorates? So maybe that's their objection. They're worried that Labor will actually fairly distribute this. Well, it's not going to be decisions made by politicians. They'll be made by an independent board. So you could learn from that. So in closing, Deputy Speaker, I say to the opposition and I say to the Greens, get with the program, back Australian manufacturing, particularly to the Greens political party. Don't be voting with the Liberals all the time. Don't be teaming up with the Liberals. Back Australian manufacturing and support this bill.